Hello, good afternoon. So we have the McDonald party on table 6. You just follow my colleague.
Thank you.
Thank you. May I take the last name?
My darlings, welcome! Welcome to the great Christmas feast!
Pip, pip, tally-ho, Joolz Guides here, and a very Merry Christmas to one and all. We're really excited because we've been invited to the Lost Estate, in my opinion, the best night out in London, especially at Christmas time. And it's a reenactment of Charles Dickens telling a Christmas carol to his guests. So we thought, what better way to celebrate Christmas than to go around London and find out some of the locations that inspired him to write this story.
Let the feast begin! Come on, you lot!
So the show is about to begin, but meanwhile, the ghost of Christmas Joolz shall convey us to the centre of the City of London, where our story begins. The Royal Exchange, Simon. The centre of commerce in Scrooge's time, in Dickens's time. This is where he would have done all his business and where his offices were. And actually, he didn't live too far from here either. Alex, all right, nice to see you.
Nice to meet you.
Lovely to meet you.
Good to see you. You are a self-proclaimed Dickens nerd.
I'm a self-proclaimed Dickens nerd. So my name's Alex. I'm the assistant director for this year's Great Christmas Feast over at the Lost Estate. And I'm a Dickens enthusiast, fanatic, and enjoy talking about it.
So why are we starting here outside the Royal Exchange?
I mean, it's the heart of commerce inside of the City of London. I mean, it couldn't be more crucial to Dickensian world, to Victorian London, to A Christmas Carol.
He lived somewhere around here, did he? Scrooge, the character, that would have been where he lived and worked.
He lived within a mile radius of his counting house, which was just round the corner. He describes Scrooge as a squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner. So they get the idea of how deep that this characterisation goes and what he's trying to draw on and the themes. And so immediately from the start of the book, you're introduced to this very, very, very vivid picture of a man scratching around all of the Victorian streets.
Scrooge is the grotesque embodiment of the vices of capitalism. All he cares about is cash. We can all see a bit of ourselves in Scrooge, really. I mean, how many of us haven't thought, God, bloody Christmas again, forced happiness, having to be congenial to everybody. Oh, why don't you come around to our place? Oh, God, I've got to go around to my friend's place again for Christmas. Oh, no. But he's utterly miserable. So that's what makes it so much more enjoyable, seeing the transformation at the end of the story.
He arrived in a gloomy suite of rooms which had once belonged to his deceased partner, Jacob Marley. On this eve of Christmas, the yard was so dark that even Scrooge, who knew its every step and stone, was fain to grope with his hands.
The reason why they say that Scrooge's counting house was around here is because it was described as being in the shadow of a church whose gruff old bell was always looking down at Scrooge through a Gothic window in the wall. I think they refer to this place, do they? Although I can't see the bell. All of these buildings, the place where all those people are drinking now, this all existed at the time. And we meet Bob Cratchit, his clerk, working away on Christmas Eve, and he's trying to warm his hands by his candle as he's so freezing cold. And that's where these charity workers come in to see Scrooge, and we discover just how stingy he is. Please listen carefully and do as they ask.
That's not your line.
No, I know, but it looks like I'm going to be involved in the performance.
Yes.
Oh dear.
It is an honour to have you here, Mr. McCready.
Thank you very much, yes,
The actor is having his time alone to learn his lines.
Correct.
Many can't go to the workhouses, and many would rather die.
Take a bow, then! Take a bow! Oh, my goodness!
It's a cool little office up there. Very romantic.
Could be like the one that Scrooge worked in. What right have you to be so happy at Christmas time? You're so poor.
And what right do you have to be so miserable when you're so rich?
I'm not rich. I'm not
When
rich.
you're so rich
I'm not rich.
and wealthy.
Every idiot who goes about with Merry Christmas on his lips should be boiled with his own pudding and buried with a stake of holly through his heart.
Humbug. Humbug, Simon.
Oh, thank you very
Humbug.
much. Thank you.
Humbug.
Yeah, why does he say humbug?
Humbug. I think they were a sweet that existed at the time. Humbug was trickery, a rip-off, a fraud, you know. Like he's saying Christmas is a humbug, and bah is just a sort of an expression of contempt. Bah. He said Christmas was a humbug, and he meant it too. Look, the Georgian vulture. This is where I believe that Charles Dickens' family still come here every year. There's a bust of Charles Dickens in the window there, but Dickens would have known this whole area. And indeed, the melancholy tavern where Scrooge has his melancholy meal is supposed to be Simpson's Tavern, which was around at the time. Sadly, it is closed down. It is very melancholy now. Back in the Victorian times, there weren't that many public holidays. There were only like 4 public holidays. I suppose you'll be wanting the whole day off tomorrow, Simon.
It's only for one day.
But he asked him to be here all the earlier the next morning. Now, Scrooge doesn't have to give him the day off, so Christmas in Victorian London or Victorian England was not what it is today. So Christmas Day was still a working day for lots of people. And the bakers would leave their ovens on so that if people needed somewhere to cook their dinner, they would come to the bakers, pop them in the baker's oven, cook the dinner and then carry it home, because many members of the poorer society didn't have access to ovens, so they would rely on bakers and things to be able to do it for them.
But Bob Cratchit is so happy, he runs back home to Camden Town across the fields, and out here in Cornhill, the kids have made a slide and he slides up and down it something like 20 times.
Christmas was certainly a very much celebrated thing, but it wasn't as popular as now. He popularises it and uses it as a time again for people to re-examine their morality. It's more about thinking about giving back, and the message is giving back rather
charity,
than...
so maybe he was really instrumental in us all having a holiday.
Well, we certainly know that the phrase Christmas spirit was popularised and immortalised in this book, and Merry Christmas was used, but it certainly wasn't used the way that we use it today.
So you see here on the Strand, this is where number 186 was, the publishers of Charles Dickens at the time when he, no, not that, Simon, that's Australia House, it's over there, but Australia House looks a lot nicer than that, because Chapman and Hall was his publishers. They were there, but then they got flattened and turned into these offices. So let's go around the corner and talk about them around there. We're in a temple. It looks amazing here. You can see why they use this so much for filming, especially Charles Dickens films. By 1843, Charles Dickens was doing pretty well. I mean, he'd had a couple of really successful stories out, and he went to America, and it inspired him to write this story called Martin Chuzzlewit. But Martin Chuzzlewit completely bombed. No one's even really heard of Martin Chuzzlewit. It didn't do very well at all. So he said, well, goodness, I've got a really big family now. I think he had 5 kids by that stage, and a bigger house, and he thought, well, what am I going to do? I've got to make some money to pay for all this. And he decided, I'm going to do a ghost story about Christmas, all about redemption. So he went to his publisher and he said, it's going to have colour illustrations, it's all going to be one story, it will come out at once, it won't be serialised, and it'll have gold trim, it's going to be amazing. And the publishers just said to him, well, who's going to pay for this? You know, your last book didn't exactly do very well. So he said, all right, I'll pay for it myself. Look, on the corner of Marylebone Road and Marylebone High Street is what used to be Devonshire Terrace, where Charles Dickens was living with his family when he wrote Christmas Carol. All that remains here these days is all these characters from his stories. It's quite fun to try and spot who all the people are. You know, I mean, there's obviously Charles Dickens here with his funny haircut. And you've got, that must be Scrooge, because that's got to be Marley turning into a door knocker. I don't know who these other ones are. Barnaby Rudge, probably. Anyway, what was amazing is that when he had this conversation with his publisher, it was October of 1843, and in about 2 months he managed to write the story, get all the illustrations done, publish 6,000 copies by December the 19th, all paid for himself, and it sold out by Christmas. It was unbelievable. But immediately afterwards, there was something like 6 or 7 different theatrical productions that sprung up. It was such a popular story and really perfect for the stage. Unfortunately, it's not very picturesque here or Christmassy, so maybe the ghost of Christmas Simon can transport us to another one of Charles Dickens's residences that does still exist.
Yeah!
And we've been transported here to number 49 Doughty Street. So this show was first performed by Charles Dickens himself. He used to do that very show, the Christmas Carol.
Yeah, so the Lost Estates have recreated essentially what Dickens used to do. He used to transform his home and turn it into a theatre. He was a huge, huge fan of theatre. It was one of his greatest passions. So he'd rip down the curtains, he'd pull down walls in some occasions, invite an audience of his friends in to watch the show. And that's what we're doing with you. We're inviting our friends in to watch the Great Christmas Feast at the Lost Estate. We know that he performed it over 200 times across his lifetime, but when he was writing A Christmas Carol, he would walk 15 to 20 miles every single night, voicing the voices of the characters to be able to get them in his head, so that when he returned home, he would put quill to paper and write very clearly all of the characters that he'd just imagined onto the page and bring them to life.
He was a bit of a night crawler, wasn't he? Like
He was, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Morning wearing a top hat, I hear, and
He
often
did.
getting arrested by the police.
Do you feel hungry, Alex? Look, that's his desk. I wonder if he carved in his initials. Probably not.
It's the only surviving suit that was worn by Dickens.
Really? He wasn't very tall, was he? Because I just read the whole book last night, and it felt exactly like watching the film. It's almost like he's giving stage directions himself, isn't it?
It's why directors and actors love adapting them into stage shows and films. He was completely into his own performances. In fact, I think theatre was his main passion in life.
So he wanted to be an actor?
He wanted to be an actor, and on the day of his audition, he got poorly and got ill and had to miss the audition entirely.
Oh, no.
And years later, he wrote to his best friend Forster saying that he would have had an entirely different career path if it wasn't for that fateful day when he got poorly. But he would have been an actor, and probably a very successful one too.
It's really nice. It was really interesting in there, wasn't it? It's lovely to see what it was, you know, because it's the only actual home that they've preserved, all his other houses. He really annoys me, Charles Dickens, because he's moved around so much in London. Virtually everywhere has a blue plaque of Charles Dickens. And this is what it actually used to look like.
That's a reproduction of the first edition.
The illustrations are done by a man called John Leach. He wanted it to be as lavish as a gift, really, but at the same time he wanted it to remain as cheap as possible, so it was sold for about 5 shillings.
When you're acting as Charles Dickens and you're doing this Christmas Carol thing,
Yeah.
you have to be all these different characters, and you have to really ham it up like he did.
Exactly, but it's not just the characters of the book. The show is a biography of Charles Dickens, so they're trying to set the scene that Charles Dickens, as a 31-year-old, does not know that this book will change the world. He just doesn't know it.
First one we've already had is the Smoking Bishop. Next you have the Pear Tree Cup and the Old Curiosity, and then the Café Noir, which pairs really well with the design.
Bring it on, I'm ready. We're back here in Craven Street, which you might recognise from my other Christmas video a few years ago, because this is where the shoeblacking factory was that Charles Dickens worked in as a boy. He was only about 12 years old.
Yeah, well, let's go back.
Ah, Ghost of Christmas Simon. Ghost of Christmas Simon past. Take us back. This street here, Craven Street, is where he got the idea for the door knocker, where Jacob Marley's face turns into the door knocker.
Ebenezer Joolz, lighten up and stop being such a miserable old git.
Because Charles Dickens would have walked down this street on his way to work as a 13-year-old boy in the shoeblacking factory over there.
There was a long and winding chain about his middle.
And later, Jacob Marley warns him that he's going to be visited by 3 spirits. This street up here in this little yard, Craig's Court off Whitehorse, really characterful. And even though it's not actually a location from A Christmas Carol, I always think of this place when Charles Dickens describes where Scrooge lives, because he describes it as being a gloomy suite of rooms up a yard where it had so little business to be. It must have run there when it was a young house playing at hide and seek with the other houses and forgotten the way out again. So it got stuck here. And I've always thought of that about this place. It's really hidden. You go up this funny little alleyway And then there's this huge house here, which is an 18th century house, actually Earl Harrington's house originally. So once he's back inside his house, he's visited by the first of the ghosts, the ghost of Christmas past, who takes him back to see his past life. You looking forward to Christmas?
Not at all, mate. I bloody hate it.
Scrooge.
I bloody hate it.
Scrooge. Thank you very much.
I'm gone. I'm gone.
We're at Mornington Crescent once again. That blue plaque up there on the side is George Cruikshank, it says, and he's an artist. He was a friend of Charles Dickens. He used to do some illustrations for him, but not from the story we're talking about. But what's interesting about it, and the reason why we're here, is that next door is the old Wellington Academy, which was a school that Charles Dickens attended. I mean, he had quite intermittent schooling as a child because his dad was in this debtor's prison. So I'm not sure exactly the time that he was here, but it was around that kind of time. I mean, it's been knocked down years ago. It was actually in here, the Wellington Academy, that Charles Dickens encountered his sadistic schoolmaster, who he described as by far the most ignorant man I've ever had the pleasure to know. And the ghost of Christmas past brings Scrooge back to see his school, and Scrooge weeps to see this lonely, neglected boy in his schoolhouse all on his own. And he also shows him images of a young woman that Scrooge was obviously in love with for a while, but because he's become so obsessed with money, his girlfriend decides to release him and says, you know, I'm no longer interested in you. You obviously love your money too much, so I release you. And Scrooge starts to get a sense of what he's missed out on. It's actually quite like a time travel story. I mean, this was way before the time machine came out. So Charles Dickens was kind of one of the first people to create the time travel genre, showing, going backwards and forwards through time, showing people what they have been and what they might become. When he awakes, he finds that he's back in his own bed, and then he sees this bright light in the next room, and he goes through and he finds the ghost of Christmas present. He's this very jolly fellow who sprinkles blessing all over the place, and he takes Scrooge to see Christmas being celebrated in all sorts of different ways. Look, here in Camden Town, look at this. Charles Dickens lived in a house on this site when he was a boy. He most likely based it on his own childhood home, because the Cratchits live in Camden too. It probably didn't look like that. It probably looked more like one of these ones over here, I expect. And this is where the ghost of Christmas present brings Scrooge to see how the Cratchits are celebrating Christmas. And even though Tiny Tim is very ill, they're still having a lovely time. And Bob Cratchit even drinks to Scrooge's health. They are very important in A Christmas Carol because they know how to do Christmas. I mean, Scrooge has got it all wrong. He's just a miserable old git. But the Cratchits, for them, it's not about presents or anything like that. There's no presents given in the story, apart from the turkey at the end. It's about spreading love and joy and spending time with your family and playing games like Blind Man's Buff. I mean, Christmas wasn't even such a big thing in the 19th century. It was around this time that with Queen Victoria having a Christmas tree, I mean, that's when that tradition started. In fact, the first Christmas card was sent by Henry Cole in the same year that A Christmas Carol was published. Do you remember when we went to Dennis Sever's house, Simon, where they recreated the room? You've got this little crutch of Tiny Tim in the corner. And
Mrs. Cratchit then went to fetch the goose, and such a bustle ensued. Bob took Tiny Tim beside him at a tiny corner of the table, and the two ubiquitous young Cratchits set chairs for everybody, not forgetting themselves, and mounting guard upon their posts, crammed spoons into their mouths, lest they should shriek for goose before their turn came to be helped.
Look, once again we have returned to the Cleveland Street Workhouse opposite the King and Queen. You probably recognise from me drinking a yard of ale in my pubs video. But yes, the workhouse here was the actual one that inspired Charles Dickens for the beginning opening scene of Oliver Twist.
He wrote A Christmas Carol to change the world, and he wrote it to strike out child poverty entirely, so that places like this would have no need to exist anymore. The parliamentarians at the time, their view of the poor was that they needed tough treatment. If they couldn't support themselves, if they were laid off from work due to sickness, misfortune or anything, then their families were put into workhouses like this one and they were completely separated.
So there was no welfare state back then?
No. The connection that Dickens has with child labour was that at the age of 12 he was sent to work in a shoe polish factory, a blackings factory called Warren's. It had a huge, profound impact on his life because he had to work to earn his family money. His father was sent to a debtor's prison in Marshalsea. His whole family eventually had to move in with him, and he became the main breadwinner for his whole family, and it scarred him for the rest of his life.
In Victorian times, hunger really was a massive thing. It haunted the streets. And from beneath the robe of the Ghost of Christmas Present, he reveals these two children. I don't know what these two kids are doing under his coat. It does sound a bit dodgy.
We get these figures called ignorance and want, these two wolfish, ragged children. From the foldings of its robe, the spirit revealed a girl and a boy.
For Dickens, this is the heart of the story because a lot of people don't have anything. They can't celebrate the way that other more wealthy people can. And he's seen this firsthand. He's experienced this poverty firsthand. Then as the clock strikes 12, Scrooge suddenly looks around him to try and find the Ghost of Christmas Present with whom he's just been conversing, but he can't see him anywhere. And then, in the distance, approaching, he sees the shadowy figure of the Ghost of Christmas yet to come. The Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come is a really scary character, isn't he? I mean, he's hooded, you don't see his face, he's got a kind of bony thing. In the films, he's like a skeleton. And he shows horrific images of his future and the fate of Tiny Tim, who dies. This is towards the end of the book. Scrooge is presented with a visualisation of his own mortality. It's really quite shocking, actually. People are robbing all the clothes off his deathbed, aren't they?
He paints a really stark, vivid image of what might happen to Scrooge unless he does something to transform himself. And really, it's a warning to all of society. If we don't do something to change or make a change.
It's a warning to me.
Yes.
To start leaving tips for cabs. So we're here in St. Peter's on Cornhill, where the ghost points towards the grave.
It's described as a graveyard that was walled in by houses, overrun by grass and weeds. Very little light got into it, this really miserable, neglected place. And the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come stands amongst these graves and points down to one.
Scrooge crept towards it, trembling as he went, and following the finger, read upon the stone of the neglected grave his own name, Ebenezer Scrooge. So I wonder if this is the very one. Actually, presumably originally, this churchyard would have had gravestones all around it. But what they do is when they clear them out to turn it into a more sort of sociable space where people can sit, then they put the gravestones around the wall. But I have a feeling they probably had gravestones all around this churchyard.
And Tiny Tim's grave, and I think he got inspired by that. I honestly, look how little it is. He must have got inspired by that. That's probably was there. That was definitely there when he was around, wasn't it?
No!
These places have those, you can see those hooks there. This was a bustling market. The next morning, Scrooge is a new man. He's giddy as a schoolboy, light as a feather, as he flings open his window and he shouts to a small boy and asks him to go around to the market where they're selling this preposterously huge turkey, which he then has sent round to Bob Cratchit's house. And it is suggested that it's Leadenhall Market here where he came and bought the turkey, because this would have been the main market. Anyway, it has been used many times in many adaptations of Christmas Carol. Look, you can still see all the little hooks and stuff from the days when they did used to hang turkey and stuff.
And the young boy must have scooted around the corner into Leadenhall Market, bought the prize turkey and delivers it to Bob Cratchit's as a sign of his redemption.
And it's supposed to be quite funny, isn't it? It's quite a funny thing because this turkey is enormous.
In a way, and it ends up at Bob Cratchit's house, and it would have been a mystery as to how Bob Cratchit would have cooked it. It was so big.
Food is so important in the story, isn't it?
It's mentioned so many times, and the smells and the tastes of the food, and it's something that the Lost Estate tries to bring the experience to people coming to visit the show. So you get a really gorgeous 3-course meal, salmon, beef, cheese, you get a gorgeous duck, 3 options for pudding.
In the story, of course, they're having a goose, aren't they?
Yeah, the Cratchit family feast on a goose, a teeny tiny little goose that they treasure and delight in as it gets cooked and is brought into the house. The smell of it is all described, and really it's just showing what matters in that room is love and appreciation of the things that you do have, and that is what I think that the goose and the feast that the Cratchits have represent.
And that really contrasts with Scrooge. He might have all the wealth in the world, but he doesn't have the love that the Cratchits have.
But at that moment, that's when he first sort of says, "Merry Christmas," doesn't it? And he's actually happy.
Merry Christmas, everybody!
Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas! Merry Christmas, Bedford Falls. Merry Christmas, Alex. Merry Christmas, Louisa.
Merry Christmas.
But after this, it was said of Scrooge that he always knew how to keep Christmas well. If any man alive possessed the knowledge, let that truly be said of all of us. Hey, Simon?
And in the words of Tiny Tim, God bless us, everyone.
Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you like the videos, and you can go over to my website, joolzguides.com, where you can find out more about me. And it's never too late to be a better man. Cheers, see you next time.